Welcome to this week's meeting of the Rockland Board of Selectmen, coming to you live on WRPS from the H. Bernard Monahan Memorial Room here at Rockland Town Hall. On the agenda this week, we've got a Union Point update, a 40B proposal, and an appointment to the council, alternate to the Council on Aging. Now here's the Chairman of the Board of Selectmen, Mr. Ed Kimball.
Good evening. Welcome to tonight's meeting. Would you all please rise? Join us for Pledge of Allegiance, led by our Veterans Agent, Tony Materna. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The audience, participants, and general public should be aware that any and all portions of this open meeting may be recorded by audio and video resources. All or some of this meeting may be rebroadcast periodically by WRPS or other outlets. Persons wanting a DVD copy of this meeting should contact WRPS or the Board of Selectmen's office. A small fee will be charged. I want to make a quick note that Mike Johnson will not be here tonight. He's away on business for his employer, but his son Jake Johnson is behind the camera standing in for his dad. At open forum, we have last minute entry, Chief John Llewellyn.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick note, I wanted to let everybody know at home that the police station will be having an open house on Saturday, October 8th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. I believe this is the first open house that we've had in the roughly 16 years since we've been at the new location. So this will be a great opportunity for the residents to come down, get a tour of the police station, speak to some of the officers. We'll have people on hand to do the car seat checks if they want, maybe do some fingerprints, some photographs of the children, that sort of stuff. So Saturday, October 8th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. There'll be more to follow, hopefully on cable TV, and I'm sure I'll be back up at the next meeting to remind people, rain or shine, come on down and get a look at your police station. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Okay, next up we have minutes. Minutes of September 6, 2016. All those in favor? So vote. Item number 3 under minutes, executive minutes of September 6, 2016.
I actually have to
It has to
abstain.
be the two of you.
That means you make the motion, then I'll
Motion to approve.
second. Not to be released till all matters have been settled. All those in favor?
Aye.
It's 2.
2-0 and 2.
Yeah.
Yep.
2 abstentions, 2
Yeah.
for, and 1 MIA.
There you go.
Unfinished business. Item number 4, Union Point update. That's going to continue, I believe, till next week. Mr. Henderson is delayed at an event for his work.
October 4th.
October 4th. Item number 5, Park Street and Howard Street 40B proposal.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, returning this week as requested were Chuck Reed and Sean, I apologize, Carpenter. They did forward to all of you, as you have in your books and was emailed to you earlier, kind of a synopsis of the whole program and what they'd like to address the board. Again, there has been a change. They are no longer looking for an LIP. This will be treated as a regular 40B due to the funding mechanism that they are seeking from the state. So the process would be they would apply for the 40B, and then everything has to come back before the towns. We have all the appropriate hearings. We notify all the abutters, the community. We check with every single department as to the impacts. I can tell you they have been already meeting with almost every department, primarily, of course, water, sewer, and fire regarding the building here. But we did invite them back and ask them to give us just a little more. Sean, I see your name in here now. Giving us just a little more background about what their plans are. They have indicated to me, and I don't know if we'll have any change in that, that they're willing to continue with their original proposal of course, they are looking for some support from the community at some point. And rather than try and jam-pack this with as many units, they're willing to continue with the 38 units, even though it's a 40B, and the Rockland preference for the affordable units when we do a lottery. Rockland residents would have a preference. So I hope I haven't stolen too much of your thunder, and I do appreciate the cooperation you've provided me.
All right. Oh, you okay? Well, I got it now. So thanks. I will just make one correction. We are filing as a local initiative program, but because of the funding mechanism, the state regulations changed a little while back. Because we're seeking public financing for this project through a bond financing program through Mass Housing currently, we are still LIP, but we have to follow the 40B process. As you know, 2 weeks ago, we actually said we were going to follow that 40B process anyway because it actually makes much more sense and it's easier to process, even though, you know, if we were just to do private financing, the LIP would have been kind of, in hindsight, we would come back to you and say, by the way, this project's built. Can we can we apply as a co-applicant to LIP? And it's a little bit easier, but it's also it's not as public friendly. So I just wanted to kind of make that correction. So you're still okay on the technical assistance and all that stuff.
Right.
Let me just want to reiterate what I said last week. Despite how the program has shifted a little bit, it's our intention to work closely with everybody in this town, all the town officials. Anybody who has any impact on this project whatsoever will have total communication, get answers on a timely basis, and just work through any neighborhood issues that may exist. So we'll make ourselves available up front and center at all times.
So, any questions from the board?
I just have a few quick things. First of all, I know, you know, like, in terms of every 40B project, I mean, we're limited because we don't meet the threshold, and you know, and thanks to the work that Larry Ryan and his committee have been doing to really make sure we have a plan going forward. That being said, you know, you know, it's been heartening to me, and I think a lot of people here that you know, how you both have approached this whole conversation with the town, with the departments, and I hope going forward, you know, that our same level of dialogue, as you mentioned, Chuck, will continue, and you know, and I hope to. It'll be a process for everyone, for the public, for the town, and for you. But I hope that, given where we are, you know, we're going forward, we'll make it worthwhile. We'll make it a really good and beneficial project. And this is, I believe, the beginning of the process. And you know, hopefully, as I mentioned, we can continue the dialogue. And I look forward to the work with you ahead. So, thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Our chairman of the ZBA is in the audience, so any comments, Bob, or you want to just say other? Okay.
This will have to go before ZBA.
Yeah.
So I think Bob, rightfully so, he's somewhat restricted as to...
No, I know, but it was just the process itself, not so
Yeah.
much with the project, but
So-
a typical 40B.
A typical 40B, at this point, you will still need site assignment, and then once you get that, you will come back.
Planning and zoning will, Mass Housing will notify you that we've applied for our 40B. Ideally, that process is a little bit more streamlined if we have a letter of support from the Board of Selectmen and the Chief Executive. So then there'll be a public hearing process, and then there'll be one streamlined ZBA planning board process, and then there'll be then their process kind of takes its shape. But it's all about 90 days or so. Is a give or take.
So
Would you mind just stating how many do 38 apartments X amount are going to be this, X amount are going to be affordable, this X amount are going to be above and below, so people will just have an idea that we're not going to stick in 38 units of, low-income housing that's going to be, when people hear 40B, of course, it brings a little quiver to their knee, and the residents who live in the neighborhood, certainly don't want to see change and something different from what they've always had. So it's
Sure.
crucial that, people are aware of exactly what we're doing, so that when they have comments and complaints, and, they'll have answers first,
Yes, and so that's the hardest question to answer, believe it or not, because this process will change that a little bit. It will be a 38-unit project, of which 9 units will be affordable under the 40B regulations, which is under 80% of AMI. And 2 weeks ago, I talked about kind of the income restrictions there and who qualifies for that. It'll be a mix of 1s, 2s, and 3 bedrooms. 3 units, 4 units will be 3-bedroom as required by state law or state regulations right now under the 40B process, and the balance, I don't have it right here in front of me, but the balance are a mix between 1s and 2s. Chuck, do you have that?
10 units.
10 1s, and the balance will be 2-bedroom.
I thought at the last meeting we said 10 units would be affordable because of the 38. You got to reach the 25% threshold.
Yeah, it's 9 or 10. We usually round up, so whatever that process will dictate. The state funding mechanism that we're using will kind of dictate if more of those units are between 80% and 120%, which is really the moderate tier income levels that we're looking at right now. There's some new programs in the state that allow for additional investment by the state if we have some of our units between 80 and 120%. The 80% units will be done by a lottery, and that'll be handled by an outside lottery agent that has to follow a certain state statute process.
We're allowed to request local preference.
So the local preference is part of the tenant selection criteria, that there will be a tenant selection criteria. And so the lottery is not that if you win, you get the apartment. You still have to follow through. Everybody applies, and then the lottery happens. And essentially what happens is the local preference, those who qualify at local preference will be lotteried first, and then the balance will be done. I will tell you that typically, even though local preference is always utilized, in most cases, you'd be interested to know that not a lot of them end up going locally because not a lot of folks apply locally. But this may be different, and I have not done one of these in Rockland, so I don't know. But
If perchance there were adequate people from the town of Rockland who wanted to get in the lottery, and we filled the place, in 2016, in 2018, 3 or 4 people move out and go on to somewhere else. So those 3 vacant apartments now going to be still Rockland preference versus just some other guy just walking in off the street. If I walked in and said I want one, and guy from Brockton someplace comes in and says he wants one, does the Rockland person still get preference in the future?
Yeah, under the tenant selection criteria that will be approved through this process, the quick answer is yes. There are other preferences that will be taken into account. There's a homeless preference that the state has. There's the motel unit preference and things like that, but generally they wouldn't qualify for these units because they're at 80%. If we had some 50% units there, those would be probably a little bit more up for grabs. Again, I'm speculating, but the answer is that when those units that are designated as affordable come up for, if they're vacant, they remain affordable and the tenant selection criteria remains in effect. So, and even for the other units, we can identify the market units or the 80 to 120 units as also designated as local preference as well. We would do that anyway as through this process. And then it's not so much a preference so much that it's, we'll be targeting folks from Rockland. That said, we also have to follow guidelines for fair housing marketing and other criteria set by HUD, and so we will have to market outside of Rockland for these units as required by state and federal law, and we will, we will do as much as we can to accommodate local preference.
Mr. Chairman, one of the questions that came up this week from a couple of residents that stopped by was about parking. It appears, if you've looked at the plans, and for the public to know that they're planning on underground parking, not underground, but first floor or ground level parking, so that this would not be tying up the streets. There should be adequate parking here. In fact, I believe your plan exceeds the local requirements for parking, and it's kind of the first floor, ground floor parking with the units above that. The second thing that has come up is the vouchers, or the Section 8 question has come up, and again, this is not a low-income housing project. It is looking at that 80%, and granted, everyone needs someplace to live, but primarily, 25% of them are at that 80% income level, and the other 75%, or 28 units in this case, for the most part of the market rate are the 180 to 120, and that makes them a bigger profit, I assume.
Although our profit is limited to state
limited.
regulations.
Yeah.
If this was a full market rate property, the profit would be unlimited. But because we're restricted by state regulations under 40B, we can we have a limit to what we can do, and it's approved by the state. So.
Got a question in the back from a gentleman.
Bob Oliver, 317 Howard Street. You're asking for a letter of recommendation for the town to expedite the 40B. What does the town of Rockland get back for helping you expedite this?
So it's a great question. We're actually not expediting. The process is actually exactly the same. It's a little bit more streamlined because there's not a lot more negotiations offline. The point is that the town of Rockland has a requirement to meet 10% of the housing stock has to be below the 80% levels in the town. Currently, the town is roughly at 7.6%. So as a result, any developer, either here or in the Union Park or anywhere in Rockland, can come in and make a proposal, and if the selectmen or the town is unwilling, then the process will go without the town's input. So our process has always been through the friendly 40B process, through the local initiative program. The town gets the benefit of technical assistance from the Department of Housing and Community Development, and we get the benefit of having a lot of the conversations to accommodate the different constituencies through the town. So the town gets a real benefit in carrying all of the units. Even though not all of the units are affordable, the town will get in their subsidized housing inventory, they'll be able to take 38 of the units, even though only 9 are affordable. This will allow the process, and for future years, this will allow the town to control the development process so that developers cannot come in. I think the term we used 2 weeks ago was to jam this down everybody's throat. This keeps the process open. It keeps it going forward. And many people will say, well, why didn't you just jam it down our throat? And the answer to that is very simple. It's very costly to do that. There's a lot of legal fees associated with it, and there's negotiations and whatnot. So we decided to have that process up front and have informal conversations. And now the public process will take place, and we'll go that way. So the town actually gets the benefit of participating in the design process and the hearings process ahead of time, but also in a public fashion.
Another gentleman.
Hi, I'm Dave Gear. I live right around the corner from this, and I'm not opposed to the project. I think, I've lived there 20 years. It's projects, that area's needed a little help for quite some time. I do have a few questions, though. First of all, you talked about parking level, and how many stories of living would be above that? Is it 3 above that, or is it 2 above that? Just design-wise.
It's 3 stories above it, right? Is the
So it's a parking level plus 3 stories, so it's been, in a sense, 4 stories.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. Why, what's the advantage to go with the 40B development for you folks as opposed to just standard going forward, pulling a, you know, just going forward and as a private developer and pulling permits and breaking ground? What's the benefit? Or what's the reasoning, I guess, is
Well, I think because we want to get multiple units in there, because of the current zoning will not allow enough units to make the purchase of the property profitable, it just wouldn't work.
So the numbers don't work?
The numbers do not work
in
at
normal
all. No.
situation?
No.
Okay.
So it's a necessity.
Let me ask you one more question. You may or may not know. If, say this goes forward the way it's designed, what would our percentage of affordable housing be after this project's complete? Are we anywhere near the 10%?
We're at about 6.5% right now, a little
Yeah.
bit higher. I think we're short in total count about 150 or 53. There is this
So we're
project.
still 120 behind, even if this
But
went
you only
forward.
have to comply, once we get our housing plan going, and one of the issues that we've been trying to resolve in the town is to have a housing plan, and so Mr. Ryan's been chairing that committee. It reduces by half the number we have to attain each year. It gives you some flexibility in saying to a developer, no, that's too large a project, we don't want that size of project. And once you reach the 10%, you can actually say no to 40B outright. We don't have that latitude today in the town of Rockland. So by doing this, it buys us another year, this many units.
But it just
and-
encourages more development of this overdevelopment of the property.
Well,
by today's
it's,
zoning.
and we're really restricted, Dave, because we're not at 10% in the town of Rockland. Once the town reaches, and we're working with a number of other properties. For example, I personally called Emerson Shoe Lofts. He has some stuff framed out. He's working through some of his financial piece, but that may give us a large number. I think I'm low on the 153. It might be 173 that we
Yeah,
need.
that's-
But if we allow him 19 units in there and he adds another 10 from his existing stock, that'll give us about 140 units towards our total. We're trying to get there so that in the future when we get a 40B come in, we can say, we're at the 10% level. No, you can't overdevelop a particular piece of property. I understand that these gentlemen are trying their best to come in and work with us.
I would say they definitely are, yes, absolutely.
At the same time, as we were faced with up on North Union Street, it was a substantially larger 40B that could have had a much bigger impact on all of the utilities and the infrastructure of the town ultimately. And you're almost at the mercy of the developer at some point until we get to that 10%. I recognize it's in somebody's...
Why is it the town can't, and I'm nothing against you folks, because I think something needs to go forward, but why is it, from my knowledge, why is it that the town can't just say no?
Well, it's state law.
You look at the list of towns, is better than half of them are less than 5%.
Yeah,
I-
No, we are way ahead, but the state recognizes that a housing shortage throughout
Yep.
the state. So they're pushing these initiatives. And quite frankly, those who get there first and work with the state get a much bigger benefit in different grants and different things going forward, because they want us to work with them. And how many units could you put in there? Just give us a rough
I mean,
number.
if we were going to go straight 40B, we'd probably push to 50 or 60 units.
Right, so I mean, so we're putting in 38 units versus 50 or 60, which is still potential. We could have fought that and had it narrowed
As
down
opposed
probably to some point, but
Or 6, that somebody that could go in without a 40B?
It's already there.
The problem, if I might, through you,
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, is because we're not at the 10% at the state level, some of the stuff can get rammed down our
Right.
throat.
Yeah, no, I
Right.
understand.
And we're trying to get there, and part of the thing is even with the housing plan, as units come forward, it buys you a little more time to try and come up with more accommodable units that would accommodate the needs of the community. It gives you a little more influence. It cuts by half the number of units you have to do in any one given year.
Also, too, if you look at our income as a state, it's a statewide law. If you look at our income for the state, we're at, say, I think we're at 40% of the average household income. And you can make the argument that every house in town is low income.
I have
You
made
know?
that argument. But, of course, we're talking to Boston, and we're talking the Boston statistical area. In our report where we were arguing over the size of the previously planned 40B on North Union Street, I made the argument that the whole town is affordable, and I used MAPC studies to show that the town is affordable. We're certainly not as well-to-do, so to speak, as some of our neighboring communities. However, that's not recognized by the state in the 40B laws. So, yeah, there are the bureaucrats or whatever.
So they take it on town by town
And
level.
can I
not
tell
even
you something
town
else?
level.
And Corey and I did this study. We went back and looked. There was a ballot question a few years ago to try and get rid of 40B in the state. And it even passed in Rockland against rescinding it. And it puts it at a real disadvantage. But ultimately, when people wanted to change the law and repeal the 40B law, the state said no, the voters said no, let's keep it. In reference to one of the other questions here, there are communities that aren't at 6.5 like the town of Rockland is. There's nothing in the state that says you have to put it in this town or until these other towns catch up to you. It's where the developer comes in with the dollars, buys that land and says, I'm going here. In this particular case, these gentlemen bought that land and could have had more. They came and met with us, talked about sewerage early on. They've probably been talking a little bit and close to a year at this point. And then kind of lost contact with us for about 8 months until I thought they were going away and they came back. But they did take into consideration some of our concerns and sewerage requirements, water capabilities, and things of that nature. Parking was an issue we pointed out very early on.
Traffic as well. Cars have to go
yeah.
somewhere, in and out of there. It's a one-way street.
Yeah. So,
Only access is on and off of Howard Street.
and all of those things will be addressed during the hearings with the zoning board and the planning board when they have joint, and they'll have a joint public meeting. And you get to say this is a concern and work hopefully with the developers to say, can you do this?
Yeah, I think everybody wants what's best.
What I can tell
It's just
you
a matter of making money.
is we could fight it and we'd lose. Is that a fair statement, Bob?
Yeah, and you lose all control.
And you lose control.
The state will just rubber stamp it, do anything they want.
You know, so,
You may.
Just to let the residents know, if we do say no, like I just said, the state comes in and rubber stamps everything, and we lose absolutely, we have no control. I mean, the other 40Bs that we've had through town, the latest one had over 110 conditions that they have to meet, and we protect the town quite well. Part of the process is when we get the application, we distribute it to all the departments, sewer, water, selectmen, and all that. And we give them a couple of weeks to respond back to us. Even planning board gets to respond back to us. I want to correct one thing is, planning board has really no input in this. They have an input, but they don't hold a meeting. It's zoning and conservation. And I don't believe you have conservation issue. So it'll be just zoning. So, once they get back with all the comments, we notify 300 feet all around, all the abutters. We have a public hearing. Sometimes, I mean, we've had them go a year with the public hearings. But with being friendly, all those issues are already ironed out. So it should be a lot quicker. And it's to the advantage of the town. You get rid of the dilapidated building, and you have some income from the taxes.
People should keep in mind, we're not advertising for 40Bs. If a 40B project comes to the town, as the zoning board chairman has said, you could take it, you can fight it, the state could overrule you, and they could say, no, we aren't going to allow this many. So we find it in the best interest of the town and the neighbors, the abutters, if you can work out some sort of amicable agreement ahead of time so that you can hopefully come to terms with all the concerns. This is just the initial part of the process. Because of the financing program that they were pursuing, that's what triggered this whole thing initially. If they were just going to go through and do it another route, we wouldn't be talking about this last meeting or this meeting. We would have been notified by the state, and then it would have been off, and you folks would have got a letter from the zoning board, and office gone and run it. So at least we're trying to get in front of some of the issues or concerns. And it's difficult, but that's the way the laws are written. And previous boards, we didn't know about counts and things like that. That was brought into light just recently, in the last year and a half. So we have a housing plan in the works now. We've gone through, we've done research on what we can do and can't do with 40B. I mean, the project at the end of Union Street, that was going to go in if we didn't do the swap at town meeting to push them into Union Point. That would have been a big burden on all the town's resources, including the school system, including the neighborhood and all that. But the state was out there, and essentially the state gave them the green flag to continue on. Despite all the letters from the residents, despite the hearings that we had here at the board, to hear the concerns, the state still said, we need it. You don't meet the numbers, so off you go. And to your point, Dave, with Rockland, because of its location, because of the income levels, and because where people can go, we become a prime piece of real estate for a 40B program, especially if you don't have it. Norwell's a little bit different. The numbers are higher if you're going to do a 40B. So it may not work. Hanover's having their own issues with some 40Bs now. It's starting to spread out because as land gets saturated or land becomes more scarce, unavailable, then people decide we need to move out to make, they're in business to make money. Just like we go to work to make money, same thing. It's just their business is putting up apartment buildings. So we're trying to do what we can to make sure we can meet the housing stock, meet the numbers, so that we can hopefully, potentially down the road, slow this down. Otherwise, but until we get to those numbers, we don't have a lot of control because the state predicates this is what you have to do. And other than finding ways to mitigate maybe our storage and our water, which they'll gladly pay to do that to get the program passed. So,
all for something happening there.
No, the project's
and I'm
been
not
the property
opposed to anybody
that's
making
there
a
now has been,
buck, but I do have a problem with the 40B issue.
it's been distressed, the property that's there now. I mean, there's no question. It's been there a long time and been stressed. And again, based on where the property is, what you can actually do, the value, if the numbers don't work, the numbers don't work. So you got to look at it two ways. Do you leave a property that's going to be an eyesore, maybe a fire hazard or something else for the town, versus maybe making, maybe shining this up a little bit so, as Bob said, you can have a little bit of control and try to get some things that you want as opposed to, no, we're going to go this route and that way. So we have to give the applicants at least a little bit of credit for trying to go that route.
Absolutely.
Because if not, the alternative is, okay, he could apply for 50 or 60. You may not get 50 or 60, but there's still going to be time, energy, expenses into this whole thing. And in the end, we lose any local control on whether it's a local initiative. Maybe it's something where I know housing's very expensive in town. Maybe our kids at some point may need to rent an apartment or something, or children of residents in town, so they're not forced to leave the town. So there's pros and cons to it. And again, nobody wants it in their backyard, but unfortunately, it's wherever the property is. I mean, you talk about the space behind Home Depot, I think. I don't know if Bob didn't mention that specifically, but there was a proposal there to put stuff right off the highway. Yet a supermarket at town meeting got shot down because the neighbors were worried about the traffics and whatnot there. And initially it got approved, but there was a larger footprint when they went back through for the Home Depot one to come back in, and it didn't work. So now you could possibly be looking at a 40B in the future, which taxes all of our town resources, school, water, sewer, all that stuff. And those are the big components, and the tax revenue that's generated from the projects really don't offset the burden. I mean, Alan Crone can tell you that. I mean, the cost to educate a student versus what you would get for that 1 unit in tax revenue, the cost far exceeds what we would gain. But we can't say no to that because it's state law. So,
I agree with you, Dave. I'm not thrilled with the 40B laws the way they are, but you're right. We don't have a lot of choice.
I mean, just so people know, though, I mean, the area median income for Rockland, it's actually all Plymouth County, is $98,100, and they're talking about doing it at 80%, right? So at 80%, they're still at, you know, $73,000. So that's not, you know, that's a policeman, that's a firefighter. You know what I mean? Oh, I'm just saying, like, a lot of people associate 40B with, like, oh no, the riffraff's going to come to town, and that's just not how it is. I mean, these are like your first, second, third year teachers. These are, you know, your guys that just start out from the fire department. These are guys that start out, you know, working on the police force. On there for a couple of years. I mean, that's. I mean, they're not going to be. It's not going to be riffraff. So that's just like a misnomer that, you know.
I think just to touch on some of the positives, you know, we're going to have 80-plus people that are going to be within walking distance of the downtown. They'll be filling the shops, diners, coffee shops, restaurants, spending money within walking distance. This project will not be a drain on the school system. We're not anticipating it being a big burden on the on schools. We'll be contributing $5,000 a unit to the town, to the water and sewer, for improvement of infrastructure. So that's almost $200,000 contribution to the town that will be realized. The area is blighted. We hope to do something to get that squared away. I mean, that's a mess. I've worked closely with the fire chief. We've got the building alarmed right now. He's just terrified that something bad will happen down there, and he can't wait to get it torn down. So that's a major concern. Any vacant building in town is the worst. So it's factors like that I think are positive and pluses for the town. And again, I want to reiterate that we're here to work with the town. I came in here a year ago and started meeting with every official I could meet with, except for Alan. But I met with Bob right straight up, and Mr. Henderson, and Laughlin, and the engineer from Conservation, Town Council, everybody, multiple times, just floating the idea out and seeing how it would go. And so it's our intention to be as friendly as possible through this, to listen, and to be sensitive to the needs of the citizens here. So I think those are some of the pluses we have. I'd like to reiterate those things. And this is a relatively small project. We're not looking to overwhelm anybody, and I think it will fit into the neighborhood, and the parking and traffic flow, I think, will be moderately impacted.
Isn't there two buildings in discussion on both Park Street and Howard Street?
No, there's one building.
No.
Only one?
Isn't
And
it
they're going to
one?
leave the other one empty? or-
Well, we've got to do one thing at a time. If we can do something with the across the street. No, we're not planning on that. It's there. It's there, and it is another eyesore, and it's something that needs to be dealt with, one way or the other. That's not part of that. That is not part of this discussion.
We don't own that property, so.
any other questions? We good? Okay, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Next up, item number 6. What's that?
I don't know if the board wants to issue a letter of support, or
Well, I thought we had,
what is it you were looking for tonight, Sean?
We were looking for the letter of support to go through as a full letter.
so you need a letter of support for the application for the state to go with the LIP?
You would authorize the town administrator to enter into a memorandum of understanding to move this project forward.
Well,
Under the constraints of the LIP program?
Well, then we would reduce to writing all of those things we talked about, the local preference and the limited 38 and the 10 units. I believe it's 10 units we're talking about is to meet the 25% threshold and all of that. And all of that stuff would be reduced to writing. We'd have town council look at it, but
so seeing, based on all this conversation, that sending a letter is the best option having the town have and maintain some leverage and some power, if you will, within this within this whole process. I would make that a motion that we send a letter, and in hopes that we'll continue the type of dialogue and work that we talked about tonight.
Second.
What's that?
Before we sign that, send that letter, is there any way they can renege on the deal?
We would be offering the letter of support with these conditions that they'll agree to. If they don't agree to those conditions,
Then we would,
It would be
withdraw the letter
MOU.
of support.
then we would go, Bob?
I'm wondering about putting the number 38 into writing, because A, we haven't seen any plans, we don't know what the parking situation is. I would just give a broad number, because until we see parking and the area, the site layout, we really can't say a number.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, they have submitted some stuff in this, and I know it has not gone before zoning, they're going for the site assignment, but we could certainly say not to exceed 38, and then it still has to meet all our other requirements, and we can work with zoning. They have, as they said, I just know this because we've gone through it before in Bridgewater and 40B, that 38 is less than what they could ask for. Not to exceed 38 we can do, but
That still can get worked out with zoning, though, right?
when they're all done and they meet with zoning, if it gets
Okay.
reduced, it gets reduced. You know, they're looking at their financial viability as well.
Okay.
Yeah, at some point they have to look at the project, whether they're going to move the project forward based on whatever the decision would be, ultimately. I mean, it becomes a business decision at that point for you gentlemen, so.
The process takes its course.
Yeah.
It could be 38, it could be 30, we don't know what that process is.
So not to exceed, you had one person, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, can I ask a question? Is there nowhere in the town that's already zoned for this type of development where it could be built? Instead of changing a zoning area?
So what happens is 40B is designed to circumvent zoning. Unfortunately, if you were to take housing, for example, we need to have 3/4 of an acre to build single house, okay? If you did a 40B subdivision, you would circumvent that requirement. So essentially, they're doing the same thing. It's a variance, or a form of a variance, I should say. But what it does, by triggering it, it kicks to the state, and the state says there's a need, so the state says you can't have anti-snob. If you're really, it's anti-snob, is really what it comes down to. No, and I did a lot of research on it myself when these were first proposed. And everything that I've read, the state seems to go through, if it meets certain criteria, if there's a need, I would say 10 out of 10 times the state moves it forward. And then we're stuck with dealing with it, fighting it, or in this case, if we go through and offer a letter of support, at least we can work with them as opposed to against them. And I've always found that it's best to take your energy and try to shape the project the way you want to see it, versus taking your energy and fighting the project and then not being quite as happy. And everything I've read on it, like I said myself, if we don't do it this way, we lose control, other than we have a hearing, and then they could always appeal to the state at that point, and the state could come in and say, sorry, thank you, but no thank you, and off you go. So in the best interest of the town, the residents of the town, that area, this is probably the best alternative versus a straight 40B. So.
I just want to say one thing. Some years ago, the area behind the Rockland skating rink was vernal pools, woods. David, you know, you've been out there 1,000 times. A couple of graves out there. We went out there, we told the state, no, it's wetlands, vernal pools, gravestones. We don't want it there, we can't put it there. State said, pick one. You know what I mean? When people wave at you, basically that's what they said. They said, well, sorry, don't agree with that. We say it's okay to build. And now there's a whole housing development down there. We fought it, and it cost us money, and we didn't get anything we wanted. This way, I know what you people think about it. You know, the plan, you know, does what you do to lollipops, but we're hamstrung, and we just want to make sure that when it gets done to the best that we can get it done for the town of Rockland. Not just for the developer, but we don't want to hamstring them, but we want to make sure that, I mean, if there's going to be issues with parking, if there's, you know, we just developed, there's all sorts of, you know, on-the-street parking because people are just going to park there, we can work with the police department and rectify that and move the parking and do what we have to do in order to get those things done. But those are all problems that are going to be dealt with as we go along. So, you know, I agree. I'll be truthful with you. This whole housing production plan and stuff like that, it's a lot of work, but it's something the state wants. And you can say, we don't want it, and they're going to say, well, you know, like Mama used to say, open your mouth, take your medicine, and shut up. We don't want to do that. We want to be able to say, well, you know, we want to be able to mold the plan to where it's beneficial to the town of Rockland and not unbeneficial to the people that are putting it in. And, you know, the zoning you talk about, you know, yeah, you can zone it over there, and then the infrastructure is so much more. It's a very, very complicated issue, and I wish I had a simple answer for you, but there isn't. All I can say is that, you know, when I go home to House Neck, where I grew up, you know, the places I played are all houses. The places I played are all streets and all those sort of things. And progress happens, and we don't always like it, but it's coming, and we want to make it the least amount of painful it can be for the town of Rockland and the residents. I wish I had a better answer for you. I wish you know, there's a magic wand that says we can buy up all the land and make it open space, and that's what we got for the rest of the town. But the state recognizes the need, and when they recognize the need, they look. And when they see a town like Rockland, who's A, new schools, B, we're united by water, sewer, and a lot of different things with the towns around us. We're no longer little Rockland bedroom community cow town. We're now a regional player because we have water. These guys come here, why? Because we have sewer. We don't have you know, a tank out in the backyard. We have water. Yeah, we got plenty of water. We just have the delivery system. So we have what people want. We got decent schools. You know, people look at that and they say, wow, I want to bring my family there. So it's a catch-22, and you know, we're caught in it, and we want to make sure that it gets done to the best that Rockland deserves, and that's what we're going to do. So,
I mean, the best thing you can do for yourselves is to actually follow through and go to the meetings.
right.
So that your voice can be heard. If you have concerns, so they can be brought out and they can be addressed. I mean, that's part of the process. I mean, what we have in front of us is preliminary. It's still going to take a process and go through it.
Right.
So by coming here tonight, talking about what, some of the questions, you've got to continue that process so you can help be part of the solution, so that you don't feel that something was, this is it. Because it's not up to us to decide. It's the whole process. And at the end of the day, zoning has hearings. It follows that process, and you'll have your opportunities to weigh in on it. And then by us going through and supporting this way, it gives us a little bit more leverage to at least get some of those issues resolved amicably, as opposed to saying flat out, no, you can't do this or that. And that's the idea. Yep.
If they go back and they figure out that the 38 units won't do it for them, what's them to say that they're not going to go ahead and do with a straight 40B and put as many units as they need?
Well, then we would remove our letter of support at that point. Our letter of support's contingent upon, I believe the motion was not to exceed 38 units, and then they were going to go through, and there's going to be some conditions for preference, okay? So if, in fact, they decide to change course, we have the same ability to change course and say we no longer support it.
Right.
So, Yep.
You want me to go up there?
Yeah.
Sure.
I just want to address that because we're not submitting this process, we're not submitting under the 40B process 50 units and then knowing that the public hearing process is going to bring it to 38. We're submitting for 38 units because we've had conversations that have dictated the site plan to be that way. So I can't give you anything other than my word, but we can't change that. Once we go through the process, we're not going to just withdraw that application and resubmit. There's a cost to that, you know, so, and the cost of going and litigating and going through the Housing Appeals Committee and all that. You're talking about a sizable amount of money for both the developer and for the town. Every project that I'm working with right now with either 40B or not 40B, a lot of towns have adopted a friendly 40 statute, so they do this process even when they've met the 10%. We do it in a way, this setup, this is not required by the state. So the way that this process works now is we've met with the town departments, and we continue to do that. But we were not required to do that. We did it because we're trying to avoid litigating, you know, and making this as ugly as possible. We know that people have concerns, and we want to address those. And so we're giving you the shot now, and then the public process will start, and then we'll talk about it again, and we'll have the plans on the tables. We do have the plans here, and we have electronic plans that we submitted. But you know, typically, I'm not going to say you can't do it, but typically you would never see somebody submit a plan and then say, well, if you're going to knock me down, now I'm going to submit a 50 unit. It just doesn't work that way. You submit once and that's it.
What's the estimated occupancy number in 38 units? Is it 100 people, 200 people? There's, you know, 3-bedroom apartments in there. Is that, it's not 38 people moving in, it's 100 plus people moving in, I'm imagining. What do you think the estimated occupancy numbers will actually be in that building?
Probably 80. So that would be the census that we would be targeting. One of the owners is Chuck is one of the is with a premier management company in town, and we've already looked at that number. It's about 80. So it's about 1.5 people per unit, but with 3 bedrooms, they're so hard to rent up. You know, usually you see 1 or 2 people in a 3-bedroom apartment.
Thank you. So we had a motion on the floor
Second.
to order a letter of support, and it was amended to say not to exceed 38 units. So,
I'll second.
any other discussion? Seconded? All those in favor? So, thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you, everyone.
We'll be in touch tomorrow.
Item number 6 under new business, appointment of alternate to Council of Aging. Mr. Chalker?
Is that what it? 6, appointment of an alternate. We have an alternate on the Council of Aging, and we're trying to promote that alternate, the appointment of the alternate to the Council on Aging. The alternate is Dr. Rogers, and he has been serving as the alternate. Bev Ladner has resigned from the Council on Aging Board, so that would mean we'll have an alternate position available if anybody wants to apply for it. But they are asking for John Rogers to be promoted from an alternate on the Council on Aging to an actual board member. And I just want to recognize that John just recently celebrated his 21st birthday, and he's dedicated to helping seniors, and he's a shining example to other millennials.
So does he have a resume we can review?
Is there?
I'll make a motion.
Can I, first of all, make a motion that we accept Beverly
Ladner's
Ladner's
resignation.
resignation with regrets. She's done a great job, and we know her well, and
Been
Beverly,
very
we're going to
active.
miss you.
She's been very active. She actually served on the RFP committee when we were reviewing things with the senior center, and she's made a lot of contributions to the community.
So we had a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? It's a vote.
You're on.
Item number 7 under new business.
That was,
You got to make a motion.
Oh, I thought we did the both. That wasn't one?
Okay.
What's the
Well,
matter?
now I'll make a motion to appoint John Rogers.
We have a
Oh, I'm
motion.
sorry. I confused myself.
John Rogers, right?
Second.
Yeah, yeah.
Second. All those in favor?
Oh, there we go.
There you go.
It's been a long day.
Is John here? He's not here.
Nice of the guy to...
Item number 7, one-day liquor license, Prime Hyundai.
Yeah, they're having a one-day event. They're looking for approval for the board. They do have to apply, so. The date is September 23rd at Prime Hyundai. They got a caterer and everything. It just requires approval of the board.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
To vote. Okay, item number 8, Mr. Chalker.
Just informing the board, we had a number of articles, and certainly people can go back. We will post this to our website, but our articles have been approved by the Attorney General from town meeting. I know there were a number of zoning articles. There are a few people waiting to see if they've been approved. Now that they've been approved, we've got to create a new map, etc. But we have received word, and I've spoken with Bob Galvin, that our articles were approved from town meeting by the Attorney General's office.
So are they effective now then?
I believe we have to post them, and then they'll be effective.
Okay. Item number 11, Town Administrator's Report and Correspondence.
We have just a request or a reminder that we'll be doing the drug take-back on October 22nd. Nick Zioli, Lieutenant Zioli from the police department, will be doing that at the police station. And a reminder, it's an opportunity, instead of doing it on the plaza at Town Hall this year, they want to get people used to going into the police department to turn their expired prescriptions or any leftover drugs or anything that could be around the house. And they have a kiosk there that is available, quite honestly, year-round, so that you don't have to have just a one-day take-back, but they are having their take-back day at the Rockland Police Station on October 22nd.
And they can actually take a look at the kiosk if they go to the open house on 10/8.
They can. They could probably turn in the drugs, I assume, on that day as well.
They can have early return day.
Early returns. And that is it for me, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Alan. Selectmen's comments and opinions expressed by the individual members do not necessarily reflect the views of all of the Board of Selectmen and are the opinions and comments of only the individual member. With that, Mr. Mullen.
I don't have anything tonight.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Mr. Welch.
Caught me off guard. No, I just want to say that, you know, we as a town, we really got to start trying to be a little bit more flexible with trying to get certain properties around this town, you know, something done with them. I mean, we all drive around this town, we see empty buildings, vacant buildings have been sitting there for years, and we just got to learn to try to work with people that want to come in and do things to these properties to try to, you know, lift up the town. And at the end of the day, these people are investors and they want to make money, but you know, we have to allow them to do certain things to make it economically feasible as an investor. So I just want everyone at home to really, you know, think about it. And when you look around town, you see someone trying to do something with a property, you know, just we should try to work with these people, these investors that want to do things to the town, and, you know, bring it up and take these properties that are dilapidated, you know, not bring in any tax revenue. You know, they redo these, they're worth a lot of money, they can add some tax value to the town, and I think it's something that we all need to really sit and think about and just be a little bit more flexible. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Ryan.
I can't get out of summer mode. You know, I just can't. It's tough. Been fishing, digging clams, you know, doing all the good things in life. I'll get back there next week. Now, the housing production plan is proceeding. Should be in place by October 1st or roughly around there. The other part of the housing is the same district that we're talking about, the 40B. We're also looking at a 40R type of district, which would allow a mixed use of housing underneath, business on the commercial on the first floor and housing above. And we're looking for it to, again, help the town of Rockland advance into the future. It's always hard when you say that word change, but change comes to us all one way or another, and we just want to make sure that as officials of the town of Rockland, we're working together with all the different departments. You know, we're just selectmen, really. We're not water commissioners, we're not sewer commissioners, we're not highway commissioners, but we work with those guys in order to make sure that the whole town gets taken care of appropriately. So look to the future. And the schools are doing great. I'm sure we get the school people here all the time. Rockland's a great community. Again, we're no longer a little community. We're a regional community bound to our neighbors through sewer, water, and the whole 9 yards. So let's use the resources we got to make what's best for Rockland. That's all I got.
Okay. Well, I know our new superintendent's been sitting in the background, and he's come to a few meetings now. So would you like to say anything, Ellen, how the school year's going up for you?
Really good start to the school year. My head hasn't stopped spinning, so but we've had a great start. Busing has been very, very smooth. Traffic, for the most part, has been smooth. We're working with Town Hall to try to resolve some parking issues that I think have been around for a long, long time. Mr. Shaka and I enjoyed a nice chicken Caesar salad together the other day. No better way to make sure we keep these relationships going, because I personally think they are the backbone of Rockland and make it what it is. So it's been a great start to the school year. We have 46 students from surrounding communities choosing to come to Rockland as opposed to their own home school, and that brings revenue, but it also says that people are recognizing the town of Rockland and the schools. So my door is always open, so I encourage anyone who has a question about the schools to please contact my office. I'd be happy to meet with anyone, talk to anyone. If there are people that I should meet that I haven't, please reach out, because I'm very interested in knowing as many people as I can. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I just want to thank everyone who went out and voted in the primary, whether your candidate won or lost. I mean, it was good to see people go out and exercise their right to vote. We have that right to vote because a lot of people fought hard to keep us free. So, you know, please use that. And, you know, we're a country where, you know, we can get out and speak up and can do different things, whether we agree with what people do or not. We have that freedom to choose. So we have a presidential election coming up, so that's why I say that. It's time to start thinking about what the choice might be in November. I also want to mention a little bit about water. There was an informal meeting with the Water Department and Water Commissioners. There was some discussion about possibly trying to go through and furnish a portion of the Union Point project for both Abington and Rockland. People may have read in the paper that there's already been a couple of commercial projects approved that are going to move forward in the Weymouth side, because Weymouth has the ability, because they have some water. Unfortunately, the choice of water over there is going to be MWRA, but that end solution won't be available for 4 to 5 years. So we're trying to look at ways that we can increase our storage capacity and possibly look at either increasing capacity by adding a well somewhere so we can go through and potentially feed some of that project to, again, at the end of the day, create new growth over in that area, which has all been zoned commercially now. So we're looking at that, and there's a follow-up meeting in, I believe, the end of October to brainstorm some more about that. So we're looking at that, especially with the drought. There was a drought, and we're still in a drought. I mean, we've had some rain, but not nearly enough. So the premise behind this is that if we can increase our storage, even if we utilize some of that short-term over at Union Point in order to get development in there, we can go back and have that storage for residents to do other development once the MWA water component comes on board to feed the balance of that project. So that's what we're looking at. So we're trying to do things and trying to work with other departments to make sure that we're looking ahead to try to keep Rockland moving, so we don't excuse me, so we don't become someone without direction. I mean, we've done a lot of changes in town zoning-wise. We've done a lot of things to try to improve the town. There's been cooperation across the board from all departments, and that's what's making Rockland, one of the leaders on the South Shore. So we want to continue that growth and that leadership role for Rockland. That's all I have for tonight. And again, we like to, remind everyone that we do have Mr. Johnson's son here who is standing in for him. I don't know if he wants to get on camera. That would be a selfie, right?
There you go.
Do we have a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Welch?
Aye.
And myself, yes. Thank you all, and good evening.